All right, let's get down to brass tacks. In the world of firearms, history has its favorites. You've got the A-listers, the superstars that everyone knows, usually because they were the right gun at the right war. But that's not the whole story. The cold, hard truth from downrange is that there's a whole class of semi-automatic rifles that never got the credit they actually earned. We're talking about guns that were dead nuts reliable, battle-tested in some of the worst places on Earth, or packed with features that were light years ahead of their time. These aren't just dusty museum pieces. Some were humped through the jungle by U.S. Marines who swore by them. Others put food on the table for generations of American hunters. And a few of them carry the very DNA that built the modern rifles we trust our lives with today. So, if you're the kind of shooter who wants to know the why behind your gear, if you appreciate a true sleeper that punches way above its weight class, then this isn't just a list. This is the story of 8 semi-auto rifles that deserve a hell of a lot more respect. And we're going to tell it in the order it happened. We have to start at the beginning. If we're talking about the granddaddy of them all, the rifle that proved a semi-auto could be a serious hunting tool, we have to talk about the Remington Model 8. This was a John Moses Browning design, and it hit the shelves way back in 1906. Think about that for a second. Over 100 years ago, when most of the country was still using horse-drawn carriages, you could walk into a hardware store and buy a powerful, reliable semi-automatic rifle. Now, its action was different. It used a long recoil system. When you fired, the barrel and the bolt stayed locked together and rocketed all the way to the back of the receiver before unlocking. If you're used to a modern gas gun, the feeling is bizarre, like the whole rifle is a pogo stick. But man, it worked. It was chambered in rounds like .35 Remington, a serious thumper for taking down deer and black bear in the thick eastern woods. Lawmen loved it too. It gave them a rapid-fire edge long before submachine guns were common. In fact, the most famous Model 8 of all time belonged to the legendary Texas Ranger, Frank Hamer. He used a modified one, in .35 Remington, to finally end the crime spree of Bonnie and Clyde. An act like that should have made it a legend forever. So why did it fade away? Mostly because those proprietary cartridges got harder to find, and newer, cheaper designs eventually took over. But make no mistake, the Model 8 was the trailblazer. Every semi-auto deer rifle you see in the woods today owes it a debt of gratitude. Now let's jump forward to World War II. Everyone knows the M1 Garand. It was the undisputed heavyweight champion. But standing right there in its shadow, and frankly getting a raw deal, was the Johnson Model 1941. Let me tell you, this thing had some serious advantages under the hood. First, forget that 8-round N-block clip. The Johnson used a 10-round, side-fed rotary magazine. Now, why is that a huge deal in a gunfight? Because you could top that magazine off with loose rounds or a stripper clip anytime. You didn't have to wait for that famous ping to reload while you were taking fire. The ability to constantly keep your rifle topped off is a massive tactical advantage. It also had a quick-change barrel system. We take that for granted on modern machine guns, but on a standard-issue infantry rifle back then, that was pure science fiction. It ran on a short recoil system, where the barrel moves back just a little bit with the bolt to unlock. It was clever, but it had its quirks. It made the rifle a bit finicky if you hung a bayonet on it, and it had more small parts than the Garand. Ultimately, what killed it was logistics. By the time the Johnson was ready for prime time, the U.S. Ordnance Department was already all in on the Garand. They weren't about to shut down those assembly lines, but it still saw combat. Elite units like the Marine Raiders and the Paramarines took it to the Pacific, and a lot of those guys preferred it for that higher capacity. But its real legacy? Melvin Johnson's multi-lug rotating bolt. That concept went straight into Eugene Stoner's head when he designed the AR-10, which then passed it directly to the AR-15. So every single time you rack the charging handle on your AR, you're feeling a piece of the Johnson's DNA. It never dethroned the Garand, but it absolutely deserves a salute. After the war, the world was rebuilding, and so were its arsenals. And right at that moment, you get what many call the last of the old world battle rifles, the FN-49. Fabrique Nationale in Belgium built this rifle with insane quality. We're talking beautiful walnut stocks and parts machined from solid steel. Holding one feels like you're holding a Swiss watch. It was designed to be the standard rifle for a healing Europe. It used a smooth, reliable tilting bolt gas system, and FN was smart. They offered it in whatever cartridge a country wanted: .30-06, 8mm Mauser, 7x57, you name it. So why isn't it as famous as the FAL that came after it? Simple, rotten timing. The FN-49 showed up about 5 minutes too late to the party. The world was already shifting its focus to select-fire assault rifles and standardized NATO cartridges. It ended up serving honorably in places like Egypt and Venezuela, but it never got that major power adoption it was built for. Collectors call it the missing link between old bolt actions and modern battle rifles. If you ever get a chance to shoot one, do it. It's an absolute Cadillac. At the exact same time FN was building their masterpiece, the French were taking a completely different approach. And look, we don't often turn to France for top-tier battle rifles, but the MAS 4956 is a serious exception. This was a rugged, no-nonsense fighting tool. It's the tough, blue-collar cousin to the FN-49's white-collar elegance. Mechanically, it's fascinating because it used a direct gas impingement system, a concept Stoner would later make famous, but the French did it first in a simpler way. Gas is tubed straight from the barrel back to the bolt carrier. No piston, no op rod. This keeps the parts count low and the weight down. It was chambered in 7.5 French, which is a fantastic cartridge, very similar ballistically to the .308 Winchester. And that was its big problem. Nobody else used it. The rifle became logistically isolated as the rest of the West moved to 7.62 NATO. But if you can find one today with some good surplus ammo, you'll discover a rifle that is shockingly accurate and incredibly soft shooting for a full-power battle rifle. It's tough as nails, easy to maintain, and it just flat-out works. It was overshadowed by NATO politics, not by any failure of its own design. By the late 50s, the old world philosophy was dying. The new name of the game was mass production. Out goes the Swiss watch, in comes the German sledgehammer. Enter the Heckler Koch G3. In the US, we all know the FAL as the right arm of the free world, but the G3 was just as widespread and in some ways even tougher. This is German engineering at its most brutally utilitarian. It's a 7.62 NATO battle rifle meant to punch through cover and put bad guys down. The magic here is the roller-delayed blowback system. There's no gas piston. Instead, it uses a set of mechanical rollers to hold the action shut just long enough for pressures to drop. The result is a rifle with an incredibly distinct recoil impulse. It doesn't push you, it snaps at you. But the trade-off is legendary reliability. A G3 will eat any garbage ammo you feed it, and it will violently eject the brass into the next zip code. Seriously, if you're the guy picking up brass at the range, don't stand next to a G3 shooter. It's heavy and the ergonomics are a bit blocky, but when you absolutely positively need a rifle that will run no matter how much mud you dump in it, the G3 is a beast. Okay, let's step out of the armory and back into the American woods for a minute. In the 1960s, if you were a deer hunter who wanted a semi-auto, Winchester tried to win you over with the Model 100. And on paper, it was a fantastic idea. This was a sleek, handsome gun. It didn't feel like a bulky military rifle. It handled fast and pointed naturally, just like a good lever action. It came in great, modern, short-action cartridges like .308 Winchester and .243. Hunters who had them loved them. They were plenty accurate for deer camp and looked great in the gun rack. But Winchester made a fatal business error. They didn't offer it in .30-06 Springfield. Back then, the .06 was still the undisputed king of the deer woods. It was like opening an ice cream shop but deciding not to sell vanilla. Their main competitor Remington ate their lunch with the Model 742 precisely because they did offer a long-action .30-06. Later, a firing pin recall scared some people off, and the rifle's reputation never fully recovered. But a Model 100 in good shape today is a sweet-shooting, classic piece of hunting iron that deserves way more respect than it gets. Since the mid-70s, the Ruger Mini 14 has been the quiet professional in the corner. While the AR-15 was getting all the glory, and all the controversy, the Mini 14 was quietly riding in the back of farm trucks and inside patrol cars all across America. Bill Ruger's genius was to take the ultra-reliable M1 Garand and M14 action and shrink it down to fire the .223 Remington cartridge. You get that same tough, rotating bolt and a self-cleaning fixed-piston gas system that just runs and runs. But its secret weapon was its traditional wood stock and profile. Let's be honest, it doesn't scare non-gun people the way a black rifle can. And that has been a huge advantage in states behind enemy lines, with strict cosmetic ban lists. The Mini often flies under the legal radar while still giving you 30 rounds of 5.56 on tap. Now, it's true, the older ones had skinny pencil barrels that would heat up and start stringing shots all over the place. That hurt its reputation for a while. But Ruger fixed that years ago. The new models have thicker, hammer-forged barrels that are plenty accurate for ranch work, coyote hunting, or home defense. It's not an AR, and it doesn't try to be. It's a rugged, dependable, all-American rifle that has quietly held the line for 50 years. And that brings us to our number 1, the rifle that learned from almost everything that came before it. If you bring up the Daewoo K2 at your local gun store, you'll probably get blank stares. And that is a crying shame, because this South Korean service rifle is the definition of a hidden gem. Think of it as the ultimate greatest hits album of rifle design. It takes the superior ergonomics and controls of the AR-15 and smashes them together with the bomb-proof long-stroke gas piston of an AK-47. Under the handguard, it's running dirty and reliable just like a Kalashnikov. But when you shoulder it, the safety, the mag release, the bolt catch, it's all right where an American shooter expects it to be. It's chambered in 5.56 NATO and feeds from standard AR mags, so it fits right into our logistics. The South Korean military has been running these things hard for decades in some of the coldest weather on Earth, and they just work. One huge advantage it has over a standard AR, a factory side-folding stock. You don't need a goofy adapter, because the recoil spring is contained in the receiver, not the buffer tube. That makes it incredibly handy for storing in a pack or using in a vehicle. So why isn't it famous here? Bad timing and bad politics. By the time it tried to make a splash, the AR and AK had completely saturated the market, and later import bans choked off the supply, making them rare. But I'm telling you, if you get behind a K2, you'll immediately wonder why we didn't buy a million of them. It is a serious, combat-proven rifle that just never got its fair shake in the States. So that's my list of 8 semi-autos that history shouldn't have slept on. It just goes to show you, sometimes the best gear isn't what's on the magazine covers. It's the stuff that just quietly gets the job done, year after year. Now, I want to hear from you down in the comments. Which one of these rifles do you think got the rawest deal? Or, what sleeper rifle did I miss that belongs on this list? Let me know what you think, and if you enjoyed this one, do me a solid. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, stay safe and keep training.